You're someone I respect highly, not just because every word you say seems to be the full, unfiltered truth from your thoughts, but also because you were one of my awesome mentors at the 101 Fellowship. Boris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, welcome. Honored to be here.
Let's go back to really the start of your journey. What was the first time you really were exposed to venture capital? Was it when you were a software engineer at EO Networks?
We didn't raise any VC money. That was a proper bootstrap back then, back in 2002. Trying to make lives, uh, make ends meet, basically, as a company. So no, that was way, way, way before VC was even a thing in Eastern Europe. So when was the first time? Um, I think it was way back in like 2000, maybe 10 or so, when I first started, reading about those kind of ridiculous rounds being raised in Silicon Valley. Nothing was really happening in Eastern Europe yet either. There was like maybe a few companies that even raised VC. Uh, so I think I first heard about VC when I was actually starting to raise a VC round. That's what it was like. Okay, I was like, I need money. Where do I get the money? And it was like, okay, there was those VC firms and how do they work? What do they do? I knew very little about that. And there was not much information on the internet about that. So I had to like learn from those meetings and, way different than it's today when you just ask GPT and it tells you the pitch and you go on and you raise billions.
Yeah, and that's really the amazing part because you were kind of early into the journey of seeing and witnessing exactly what VC has been through for Eastern Europe. And I had one VC that I interviewed before from Innovo VC, and they basically said the same thing where it was like Eastern Europe, CEE, they weren't really that common, as in like VC is this really big thing and everyone wants it. It was just like it was really early, and when they actually discovered it, they were like, okay, I just somehow discovered it through like a podcast or something that I was reading, and then it just happened that they were really interested in VC and they just got into VC. So could you talk about from that really start of even hearing what VC was to right now? Could you talk about that journey, the amazing journey that you had?
First VCs I met were actually not Polish or Eastern European. They were American. Uh, it was when I traveled to San Francisco back in 2011 to pitch my startup because I had a startup already. And that was I think that was organized by Plug and Play in SF. And then we had like a bunch of random VCs and we had a bunch of random Eastern Europeans. And some of them actually turned out to be like really good founders later on. But back then it was just kind of all the newbies and we didn't really know how to do those things. So we kind of like, we said things we thought we should be saying, but we got really burned after, those pitches and the questions were really tough and we had no answers. So I don't think anyone really raised any money during that pitch contest, but at least we kind of hit the wall for the first time and it, got us to do some reading. And eventually, I did, was successful raising some money from both angels and VC investors. So that was my first kind of encounter. Very different to the ones that we had in Eastern Europe, because in the US, the striking thing that was super fresh to me was that even though I was like really fresh, really rough, people kind of assumed, hey, maybe it's always like worth having a chat just in case this guy is the next Zuckerberg, like just in case, like I don't want to miss that. So I was young, inexperienced, but I still was able to kind of, get meetings with some of the really good people. Like, I met Bill Gross, for example, in LA, which was like the most intense half an hour of my time. And when people, I say that to people today, it was like, shit, like, how did that happen? I was like, they just emailed Bill Gross and he said, come to Pasadena and have a chat, and we did. So So it's not as hard, at least it wasn't back then. And back when I was in Poland back then, and back in 2000, early 2010s, the striking part was it wasn't as easy in Poland. Like it was so hard to get through. Like people were not as open to me because they hadn't seen people like me succeed. So it was just tougher. It was just way tougher to get, both to VCs, like there was maybe five, and maybe to other angels or to anyone who can, get me any money. So very different times. It's still different, Silicon Valley in Europe, but back then it was like almost different planets.
It's like you kind of just have to shoot your shot again and again and again. And that's kind of what, you did. And back then, there weren't much materials compared to like right now that we have. So when you're doing pitch competitions, it's like you don't even have that advantage right there where you can't even like look at past materials or even YouTube, just like look at how you actually do it. So the, investors, when they actually invested in you, it was because they saw, who you naturally were, an awesome dude. And they're like, okay, we can't miss out on this guy because he's probably going to do something great in the future. And, just like how they predicted, you're really successful right now. Could you talk about your continuation of your journey all the way to like right now when you co-founded your fund?
Sure. The guy who invested was actually German, Lars Heinrich. He founded this really cool company back then. It was called Zinc. And no one knows about this now, but it was like as big as LinkedIn back then. It was like LinkedIn for the German speaking markets. So he sold this company and he had this crazy idea of like replicating Y Combinator in Europe. YC was super, super young as well. That was in 2011 or 12. And he had this idea, let's fund the geeks. He was actually, that was the language he used on the website. So he founded this acceleration program called Hack Forward. It was really a VC fund because back then it was funding like 300K. So like pre-seed VC fund funding startups. And the idea was to fund geeks who have no clue about sales, no clue about fundraising, but they just know how to code. And we're a team of three back then, and three engineers basically. So what he did was that he was actually asking us to like we had like a proper presentation which went really bad, but then we had like code interviews, like actually like he tested how well we code, and we went pretty good in that, especially my CTO who like had a 100% score on Codility, which they used to test us. They were like, those guys have no idea how to do business, but we're gonna teach them, but they're really good coders, so hopefully something comes out of it. So that was basically the idea. So pretty, brave investing for Europe back then. I really wish Hack Forward kind of made it and existed till today, because that was a great concept. And after a few years, they stopped. They started doing other stuff. So that was back in 2011 when we get first funded by proper like private fund, because before we get some grants, which I don't want to even talk about. So then it was the years of just really tough, uh, tough times, because we thought like, oh, we scored, we we raised money, now we're amazing. Someone told us we can make it, and we're gonna make it, and obviously we're talking had no clue how to do it, and it's so hard to teach people that skills that they don't have. It took us a while. Like it took me a while to become a salesperson, a storyteller, from like a engineer that I was. I was a I love coding. That's why I wanted to do this. So it took me a few years, a few pivots, some miserable ideas that I don't want to even, I'm embarrassed to even mention here. But eventually I think I was just like on a constant lookout for good people. I think the reason we eventually succeeded, at least on this kind of small scale, was that I met another guy who became my angel investor, Mark de Querven, a British dude who was running a big cinema chain back then in the UK. And I guess like my sales skills became better because I convinced him to quit that job and join us as a co-founder and start selling our thing. And the thing was recommendation engine for media. And he immediately saw that this could be relevant for the cinema industry. with kind of flat, not really growing attendance in cinemas. And he thought he could use this. And it was just a match made in heaven because we had the skills, we had the tech, we knew how to do it, but he had the contacts, he had the reputation in the industry, and he basically got us, quick meetings with top people in the industry across the globe. So that was great, and we got the first customers. So that was the kind of aha moments. It's like, okay, we have something people actually want to pay for. Amazing. Like, but then like we never actually had a chance to kind of grow this. We scored like 10 customers maybe, and we started like growing in revenue. We get actually to profitability in a year after Mark joined. But then my now partner, back then just a beard dude, Paul Bregio, so he told me, hey, go to Krakow. There's this dude from US, Ashwin, coming, and he has this full company that looks kind of like yours. And the company was called Samba TV. My company was called Filmmaster. And I actually did go to Krakow and met him at the conference. And then we really clicked. And he said, and then during that meeting, he's like, are you looking to sell? I'm like, yeah, I'm selling a lot. Like, I'm really selling to the cinema chain. I say, no, 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 no. Like, I'm looking to like sell the company. Like, why would I do that? Like, that makes no sense. We're growing. It's good. And he's like, nah, this could work because we do similar stuff, but we have access to like way bigger customers. And then I thought about this, and then we kind of started working together. First, as a customer, like we developed some stuff to those guys. It was really good. It felt like I think my team got more excited about Samba that they got excited about my things. And at some point, I was like, yeah, I think it actually kind of makes sense. And then after a year, I think from that meeting, I went to San Francisco. We did some negotiations. Actually, Paul was part of those negotiations. He was trying, like he really wanted this deal to happen. And we made a deal, and we sold the company. And it was mostly all stock acquisition by one startup acquired another one, or maybe like two startups merged. And it's such a good, decision because those guys knew how to bring customers, and we knew how to bring great engineers and build products. And in 4 years after the acquisition, the company grew from like 5 million to 150 million in revenue. We grew from like 8 people in Poland to 100 plus people in Poland and UK, in Netherlands. And I was part of growing this whole thing. So that was just really amazing place to be, finally at a place where a startup is growing. Unfortunately, I was at just a small part, equity wise of Stamba, but still, I think, you know, we made it way better. Definitely, we could have if we stayed independent. So that was just a good decision. And then 3.5 years at Samba, we met with Paul again. And he was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" I was like, "Yeah, good," but like I was kind of like looking for like something more, something fresh. I've been, starting new things every 3 to 5 years during my whole career. And he was like, "Hey, you're really well connected to in Poland, in Europe, Eastern Europe. I would like to be doing some more investing." And just like over a year, we decided to start a fund together. That's exactly that. That's what it actually happened in San Francisco in Soma, in one of the beer places there. So you know, so we decided, hey, let's do it. And then, it's a longer journey how we actually decided to, do the fundraise and everything. But that was when we kind of decided, hey, let's maybe try to bring the strengths that we have. My strength was being an entrepreneur, being very well connected, pretty good reputation locally, and good access to talent, good access to deal flow. And his was like, oh, he's already invested in like 10 unicorns back then in pre-seed, and he's really looking to kind of grow his empire internationally. And for some reason, he felt I'm gonna be, a good partner for him, which I think turned out to be true. So that's the story of how we kind of started from engineer to entrepreneur, and now to the evil side, to the VC side of things.
And Paul saw your potential too. You were younger. It was just, you had a great job. You started as an engineer and you did consulting, and then you were able to quit your job, move back to Warsaw after that grant. And it was like you finally got to start your startups and actually just like really go full time on your projects, where that's an amazing part. That is where you kind of bloomed, where it was like oh, you can finally do all these amazing things that you've been thinking about. And then you met tons of great people. You met a guy who just Paul kind of just introduced you to, and you guys clicked it off afterwards, this great acquisition. And it really turned that company into something that's really, really great, where they ended up, having like 100 million revenue, which is amazing. That's like a unicorn right there. And you have access, you have deal flow access, and those great entrepreneurs. So he's like, okay, let me just bring this guy on, so then he can actually invest, and I'll give him my reputation saying that I trust this guy. He can do this, he can invest, and then you guys really just start your fun off a beard, which is the most amazing part ever. Could you talk about, after seeing like this entire ecosystem of VC from the start to really right now in like Poland and all your experience, who is VC not for?
It's not for most people, I'd say. Why would you kind of want to be a VC and who is it not for? It's not for people who want to make a lot of money, for sure, right now. Because it's like you apply to McKinsey and you work your ass off for like, 12 hours a day, every day, including weekends. And then you get paid like, teller at the local, VC doesn't pay well unless you become a VC in a big fund. But if you're in a big fund, you have zero impact. You're basically an analyst. Deep research is replacing you any day now. And if you're a VC, aspiring VC, young VC, an analyst, as associate in a small fund, you're starving. There is not much money for paying people in a small fund, because that's how the funds work. We raise money to invest. We don't raise money to pay people. So there isn't much work in VC either. There's like in my fund, I only hire two people full time. There's three partners working, and there's two people full time being hired. It's just a if you so it's not for most people. It's only for those people who really have a plan, because it's not an end goal to be in a VC, but it's an opener. If you are there, you're meeting tons of really amazing people. It's an amazing start of a career if you really want to be in entrepreneurship in tech, if you want to run a company at some point, or if you want to run your own fund at some point. So it's a first step on the kind of long plan for a career. But if you don't have that, if you don't have that plan, and you're like, break into VC, let's see what happens, you're probably gonna be disappointed because you won't get much in the first year or two. It's gonna kind of accumulate. The more people you meet, the more it's best to have a plan. It's best to have a plan. It's super, super hard to become a partner, at a fund that you applied to as an, intern. That happens, but that just happens very rarely. So betting on the right horse in VC is hard as well, because most VCs fail, just like most startups fail. So you really need to like know where to apply, and you need to be amazing as well. Like it's not easy. Like it's a job that doesn't pay very well, doesn't have a lot of benefits in a monetary sense of the things, but it still requires you to be exceptional, especially exceptional in like psychology. When I talk early stage VC, it's all about trying to understand the ambition of people, and try to understand whether they are honest, transparent enough. At the same time, do they have it? Do they have what it takes to build great companies? It's kind of psychological HR skills more than financial skills. You don't need really a lot of financial skills to be an early stage VC. You need to really read people well, and you need to really love meeting people, hanging out. Only two really things that you can bring to a fund like mine is either unique deal flow, like you're from a great university and you know the network of great alumni that I wouldn't have access to. That's a great value to me. So amazing pipeline that you can bring, or you can bring people to invest in my fund. That's the two things that I really need. So you need to really be pretty exceptional to be part of this, and you need to have a plan. For most people, it just doesn't make much sense. McKinsey, banking, investment banking, or just like regular corporate job is way, way better than this.
It's like Boris says, you really, really have to have a plan. I really get like DMs from people asking like, how do I become a partner? Do you have any partner roles that you can transfer me to? And I'm like, partner, especially like partner, GP, or anything like that, the senior roles, it's like the funds will only give that to someone they've known for at least 5 years. So if you're not someone that they already know for 5 years, or you could even be a founder who they've known and had a successful exit from their investment, then you're more likely to become a partner. But if you don't have that, then you really have to build up, your own deal flow, or you can just start a fund like Borys. What was the hardest things in your first 6 months of founding your fund?
Oh, definitely fundraising and just so many rejections. Most of the people I thought could be great LPs from my fund said no to me, not because they didn't like me or not because they thought I cannot make it. They thought maybe this guy can make it, but no one really looks into investing in a VC fund. So you have to like time this well. Like they need to like there's so many of those people I met and I hang out with, and after like 5 years, they invested in my fund. They committed now to invest in fund three, even though I'm not really raising yet. But but we've been around, we've known each other for quite a while, but it just wasn't a great timing for them. They were investing in something else, they're in their own thing, or now they had a good exit and now they finally have money to really diversify different reasons. It's just most people are gonna say no, and no one really advertises that they want to be a limited partner at a fund. Most people that I convinced were first time LPs, so we were the only fund that they invested into, and it was mostly because of just like the opportunity me or Paul or Diana kind of painted, and they were like, yeah, let's give it a go. But they invested small amounts of money. So even though that we convinced, the minimal ticket in our first fund was 25K, 25K to invest in a VC fund. So it's like it's way more paperwork than it's worth, frankly. But that was the minimum we started with, and we get our first like 5 or 6 super small checks, and then it kind of started maybe going a bit easier, but not much easier. Like even though we had a part of the fund raised, like in the beginning, it looks like you're at 1% of your goal, and it's not really going forward very quickly. So like yeah, mentally trying to not get discouraged by all the no's, and also like trying to expand the network quickly to try to get to people who are not the first, acquaintance. They're like friends of friends who I, suspect they could have more money and they could be interested, and just losing all your self-respect basically and trying to be real. You have to really reach out to anyone, and sometimes it's funny because you reach out to someone that they they are penniless, that they're just laughing and say, "Hey, you think I have any money? I have zero money." Like, but sometimes it's the other way around. Like you just wouldn't suspect that that person could be an investor in a VC fund, but you didn't know they made some money on crypto back in 2010, and they just didn't brag about that. But now suddenly it turns out that there is an opportunity, and they're like, "Yeah, sure, let's do it." So some of the biggest checks actually came from people like completely that wouldn't predict they would be coming with such a big checks. So yeah, just the like any project that you start with, but even harder, I think, because with a startup, at least you have people who advertise they want to be angels, they want to be they were like work at a VC fund, and their job is to invest. No one's job is to invest as an LP in a super small emerging fund. So it's just like going in the darkness and banging on different doors. Sometimes miraculously someone says yes. I think I talked to like 400 people maybe and get 20 to commit. And those were super. The biggest ticket we got was 250. That was like, oh wow, we scored. For a 10 million fund, you have to have a lot of those um, to convince. So yeah, I don't envy anyone who's kind of starting on that journey, frankly.
Especially for the first fund. It's like, it's kind of like Boris says, 400. Just imagine people wouldn't even go to like 50 people. And then, Boris went to 400 people, which is just insane. And it's like, especially for first time funds, those are like so, so hard. Because, just like Boris says, it's not the LP's job to invest in your fund. So you have to always actively put yourself out there in just saying like, hey, I want some investors. And if you believe my potential, then do it. At first, it's usually the close friends, the people who know you well, and then their friends of friends. But the craziest thing is that sometimes the biggest checks really come from people you expect the least from. So it's like you really do have to put yourself out there in the open so then people can actually help you. And that is like the rule of life, where if you want something, just say it openly, and then it will just come to you for, if you're really consistent and you're really, really passionate about it. Could you talk about, what is two people that you hired as, maybe a VC that really just made you and gave you the decision to really just hire them?
That's easy. So the first one is Sasha Yatsenko. I met him when I was at Fund One, and he had his own kind of small family. He was like managing a small family office in Ukraine, investing in super pre-seed founders in Ukraine. And we just hang out. We mostly talk deal flow, co-investing, and we just had fun. He came to Warsaw to our office, and we just had a good meeting. And then he started kind of sending us some deal flow from his own fund, but also from other Ukrainian founders. At that time, we weren't that interested. We were mostly interested in Polish founders, but you start very small, very narrow, and then you kind of expand in VC to different geographies. But then two things happened. My first fund, I spent my whole first fund, so I started raising the second fund, where we kind of already knew how, like, we knew more how to do this, so we decided to expand a bit and invest across Central Eastern Europe and diaspora, not just Poland and Polish entrepreneurs locally. And then second thing, the war started in Ukraine. Sasha basically ran out of his funds and he couldn't really raise another fund at that. It was just the worst time ever to be raising. So at some point I was like, hey, Sasha, like, what are you doing? And he's like, I don't know. I'm, advising some companies, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, I'm expanding, and I think there's an opportunity. I'm really well networked in Poland. You're really well networked in Ukraine, and I would like to make some investments in Ukraine. How about you kind of start selling us some deals? Maybe you become a scout for us. And then that's how it happened. We didn't even have a proper agreement, but it was like, yeah, let's just work. And we, like, for the first few months, we didn't have like any paperwork. He just kind of started, sending us some stuff. We saw how it is to work together. And at some point, when he sent us the first deal, that was FinMap, a really cool founder, Alex. So I was like, oh, yeah, that's good. That's good. That's the type of founder we're looking for. And then he started sending us some more stuff, and more the stuff that he sent us was like, it feels like those are SMOK type of founders. So very quickly, it naturally became that it was like, hey, let's maybe, now we had the fund raised and we started investing. Maybe you can do this full time for us. And he was like, yeah, full time, maybe not yet, because he had some other stuff to do, but like maybe when I finish those, then I really do that. And eventually, he was able to switch full time, and that's how it worked out. And the reason it was a good match was that we had a very similar culture, very similar approach into investing, but he had a very different deal flow. Like he brought something we just didn't have. We had the trust and the reputation across early stage founders in Ukraine and Ukrainian diaspora, which immediately gave us validated us for the whole market. And so that's what I'm saying. When you're like bringing something to the VC, the best thing you can bring is deal flow. The second best is funds, but deal flow is unique. Funds is like kind of commodity. You can hire someone. It doesn't have to be a full-time member, but for deal flow, it's crucial. Like that's the reason for a fund to be successful. If you're able to find unique companies others cannot. So this, and the second one, there's going to be two people because both went through 101, the fellowship actually. So it was Tomek, who was one of the first ones that went through 101. He was working directly with Paul, and the second one was Sonia. And she also went through she was also working directly with Paul. So it was like, working with Paul really helps. But it's not just working with Paul. Like when you work with Paul, like I've been working with Paul for 6 years now. I can say you really need to prove yourself. Like he's a very demanding guy. So if you don't put 100% into what you do, uh, it's not gonna end well. It's gonna end quickly, and then you're not gonna get another chance. So if you really decide to work with the guy, like, you need to think seriously about that and put the most effort you can. So I think both Tomek and Sonia did that. So when I was basically when we one of the other analysts decided to pursue an academic career, we decided, hey, let's. And Paul was like, hey, I work with this guy, Tomek, and he's pretty good in like quickly analyzing stuff for us. It was like, that's exactly someone we needed. So we basically started like hired him immediately, and he's with us since like for 2.5 years now. And with Sonia, her skills were a bit different because we were looking for someone that could hunt startups for us in London and also outside of Poland, basically outside of Central Eastern Europe, but the people that are in the diaspora that's we're still interested into. But we really lacked the network uh, to see those people super early. And Sonia was running this VC lab thing for Founder Institute back then, and she already made a good network in London, and she was really looking to. And she actually started sending us regardless some interesting companies with that one that we actually wanted to invest. So there was some signals on both ends, like really well networked. She really wanted to become closer to us because it also felt we had similar goals and similar, culture. So like immediately when we kind of started talking, after a few days, I was like, hey, let's just, let's start working together. And that's exactly what, as with Sasha. And that's mostly how it happens in VC. Very rarely you apply for a job and then I see a number of, potential people, and then we have some HR department that analyzes that. That maybe happens, but probably not in pre-seed small funds. Your relationship, previous, proving even before you work for us that you can add value. That's what lands you a job. Just because if you don't do that, like others will, and I prefer to work with those proactive than those who are like just waiting. And then once I say, you're just not doing yourself an advantage if you're not proactive and you're not, trying to show us what the deal is before we even have a deal. So that's the three actually stories of people we hired, and we still work together.
And the common theme is that, they really do have the initiative and the fact that they proved themselves before you even like brought them on full time. He has that Ukraine deal flow where heck, even like 25% of CEE, Y Combinator alums are from Ukraine. So it's like a really, really central part of CEE. So it's like if you can really, really bring that deal flow, if you can bring that value, just step yourself into the door by becoming a scout or even just like sending the deals to the VCs that you meet. And then afterwards, if they think it's great, if they think that your values align, and this is the second most important part, because you guys have to really, really match well with the partners. You guys gotta vibe, and you guys just gotta have the same philosophy. And if your values really do match, then that is basically the golden egg for you to really just break into VC right away. Could you talk about, you know, obviously starting relationships are kind of easy. You just have to be initiative. But how do you really maintain those really, really high net worth and really senior to you? How do you maintain those relationships? What are your unique ways?
They definitely already have to have an interest. Very hard to convince someone that doesn't have an interest in tech, doesn't have an interest in startups. They already, like, before they become limited partners, they already had to, like, in their mind make a decision. I'm gonna like diversify. I'm gonna look out. I'm looking for something. So the timing is important. Like, I think people who are like CEOs of big companies, and they were just busy, and they were always busy. The first thing in their mind was the company and just like the current projects. They weren't really looking to do anything else. But at some point, like, maybe they, stop being a CEO, went to the chairman. Like there needs to be something that happens that kind of makes them rearrange their life and rearrange their goals. And this is the time to strike because that's the time when they maybe they're looking for something. So anytime I see a job change or see when that they maybe brag that they made the first angel investment, all of those things are good signals to ping again and say, hey, we talked a while ago, you weren't interested, but hey, maybe you're in a different position, in a different place in your life now. Maybe you want to have a chat again. So just being there. One thing that really worked for us well is that we organize those kind of niche but very high level events for the network of people we know. We call them just SMOK cocktails, and that's what they are. It's just great people coming together for an evening to drink, to talk, and to kind of exchange ideas. Everyone who attended was really like surprised how great people are there, and that they really loved the fact that there was no agenda, no like hidden agenda in those meetings. We all just want to, worst thing that can happen. We just get a bunch of people together and they network, and maybe some of them make deals together or they meet new friends and stuff like that. So there isn't any like fundraising during those events. But if someone enters and someone gets there and they have a good impression of what happened, it's so much more likely that they're gonna, when I reach out again, when I maybe fundraising, they're like, oh yeah, I remember, being part of the small event, and that was great. So they already have a good connection. They have a positive thought when our brand comes. So it's just way easier to close them when they're ready, because most of them are not ready. But when they're ready, it's just way more likely they're gonna wanna spend their money with us. And the reason people invest, like individuals invest as LPs in funds, very rarely those are financial reasons. And most of those people who invested, they invest for social reasons. And they want to learn something. They want to meet new people. They want to take advantage of our network. They want to meet great founders, maybe invest in them specifically. Different reasons. Everyone has their own. Some people have their own companies and they want to maybe, they believe that once you invest and the companies become big, they could be customers to their company. Now it's a long stretch, but that happens as well. So just really need to understand that most people don't think just financially. They need to, believe that this is gonna, make them some money in the future, or they see the upside. But the reason they kind of stay and they invest in the next funds usually is they want to keep that relationship going. So it goes both ways. I need to provide value outside of just the DPI, TVPI, all those shortcuts. I need to provide constant value to them. So I think that how I maintain the relationship, yeah, well, we have 70 LPs, so it's not easy, but a lot of them are just passive. They're not really, interested in constant contact. But with all of those, we do. I meet them. I have calls. I very often I just ping them about like I know, for example, there is this, I don't know, retail tech company, and I have this guy who's in retail tech. So I'm like, hey, here's something we're looking at. Maybe it's interesting for you, or maybe you can just give me like a few thoughts about this company. And that's how we kind of keep in touch. But they also feel informed of what we're looking at, and it actually brings value to both. To the LP, they see interesting deal flow related to what they do, and we see, we have free expert advice from people who made it. So it really works for both ways. Very, being very proactive, being very transparent in communication. You cannot really train to do that. You need to that needs to be in your DNA. But you should definitely do appreciate it when I, update them every 3 months constantly about the ups and downs, about all the write-offs and about all the successes, about all the problems we have and all the great stuff that's happening. The more they see that, the more they see, okay, those guys at SMOK, they're not always successful. Very often, as in VC, we make really shitty decisions. We back the wrong people, but at least we're transparent about it. We're not hiding anything. And, once the successes happen, we can be all part of the success. So I think all of those things, is part of that kind of long-term relationship building. Not just with the LPs. I do that with non-LPs as well. Of people who I think they will be LPs at some point, or just are really great dudes that I want to, great, women I want to, I want to have a relationship with. in the business sense. So it just happens. It just kind of naturally happens if you never know what's gonna come out of those kind of updates and meetings, and very often good stuff happens. So you have to like kind of love the kind of networking and the no agenda meetings. A lot of no agenda meetings at your VC.
Yeah, and it's kind of like Boris says, there's tons of factors that really goes into this. Obviously, the first one is that it is more of a personal thing, as in like it's more of a personal relationship. That's the first thing. But then obviously you have to provide value, as in like, hey, are you actually doing well? Are you actually providing the numbers? And then afterwards, there's obviously the economic reasons where, maybe half of your LPs would invest in the last month in your next fund. But it's really, really where you have to keep them updated. Boris keeps them updated every single month. And he also has his LinkedIn where he's just like so open, he's unfiltered about like everything possible. So they are really following his journey and they're just like, okay, this guy, he's amazing, and I always want to be a part of SMOK. Every single time they want to be a part of the events, they don't want to miss those events because they're so amazing. There's no agenda, and it's just everyone happy talking about life, talking about, hey, what better stuff they can do for the world. And heck, SMOK just happens to be one of them where they invest in the future of founders for CEE. Could you just talk a bit about how your communities that you started Poland and also Ricture really just came together like really quickly?
Sure. So Reactor just was kind of natural. We're young founders in Warsaw back in 2010, and there wasn't really much happening. We wanted to hang out with other founders. We wanted to kind of see who's there, who's building, who's doing stuff. There wasn't really much happening. There was some hacker spaces for super, super hardcore, engineers, but not much for founders from different, backgrounds. So we just decided to rent out a house that we couldn't afford, so we had to get more people involved so that they could pay the rent for us and with us. And we started like when we had the house already, a really nice villa with a nice garden in North Forest. So we started kind of throwing events, and it was like every month basically we threw a small event. We got some sponsors for pizza and for beer, and we just just went along with that. And interestingly, a lot of amazing people started coming because they were like, oh, something fresh is happening, something new. A lot of great people. We already had some kind of audience, some kind of network, so it is spread pretty quickly, and it became the event to attend in Warsaw. And so every month we had this open reactor event that we called it. And we had like one small speaker, but then it was just networking. We had an actual garage, and in the garage we had like the networking with the over the ping pong table, like super cliche, super cliche. But that's how it started. We didn't have an agenda. The only agenda was, hey, let's just meet more people. And a lot of people, actually started businesses there by meeting, people over the beer or in the garden, and they started building stuff together. So that was that. We started Poland a bit different. We had a more kind of precise ideas. We didn't have like a lobby organization, like a think tank that was helping startups in our region in Poland. So we first found a sponsor for that. That was Google at the time. Then we had some other corporates that joined, and we like, hey, let's have a representation. So it was like to figure out what the problems are. So we kind of asked the community. We had a few meetings where we kind of brainstormed and we came up with a manifesto. And then we were like, how can we fix those problems? So we started focusing on one problem at a time. And we actually were pretty successful fixing some of the problems for the Polish tech ecosystem. But that was more of a process versus in Reactor was just let's have fun and let's see what happens. And that's how we actually interestingly build a cool network. And a lot of my even limited partners are people who I met through Reactor because they became mentors. Because then we kind of started running like a small acceleration program around Reactor. They became mentors, they became angel investors, and this is the initial kind of people that trusted us pretty well, that became our early supporters. So yeah, so that's kind of how it went from 0 to 1.
Yeah, and really consistently building like two communities. That's just incredible where it's like obviously the first one, it was just kind of organic, natural. You had some connections and you guys have fun. And then, Startup Poland, it was a lot more decisive where you had a sponsorship from Google, who just wanted that ecosystem in Poland to be better and CE to be really, really better. So you really, really started this startup ecosystem, and I think you really, really accelerated it in Poland, which is the amazing thing. And that's why Paul probably said that, heck, you really do have that network. You really do have that access. And that's why he really partnered with you. So let's say, you go to these events and you met a co-founder. What is like the top three things that would make you invest in their startup?
Just so first, what I'm looking at is what their ambition is. Is it kind of, do they want to build a company for their own because they hate their employer, or do they really want to change something? Do they really have something bigger, like a bigger idea in their heads? Like, why do they want to build? Do they want to build because they want to get rich? Probably not the greatest motivation. Or do they want to build because they were like, they really saw something. They really saw like a problem, which is big, which is on a big industry, and they really want to, build like almost a movement versus just a small company. So ambition is one. They need to really know how to talk about it, because building business is constant talking, constant convincing, trying to sound like a leader and then eventually becoming a leader so that you can attract the best employees, the best co-founders, the best investors, the best customers. All of that is storytelling. So if you're not a storyteller, get one or like become one, because you're just gonna need it. Those two things go together. And then the third thing, which is equally important, is delivering fast, like iterating fast. If I meet you on Tuesday and then we meet on Friday and you haven't had any progress, probably not gonna be, as interested in investing. Every time we meet, you need to surprise me how fast you're moving. And especially now with the era of AI, of the new kind of breakthrough that happened, it's easier than ever. You can really iterate super fast with product. You can customize products for every pitch, for every sales, for every customer. You can really move faster if you want to. So if you have those three things, ambition, being able to tell a story, and working really fast in a lean manner, those are the three kind of things that excite me, and I'm gonna want to work with you.
Yeah, it's like Boris says, you really, really do have to have a real reason for why you're starting it, not just because, you hate your employer, you hate Google or something, and then you're just like, okay, I can probably get some good investors because I came from Google. No, like you have to find a really big problem, because this is for you too, where, if you really found that big problem, you can become a unicorn and you can really just take charge of that entire market. And then you also have to be really good at storytelling because, startups, they really are sales where, if you're a co-founder, it's easier to sell to CEOs and the top, C-suite, rather than just like if you were a business development, then, it's going to be harder to sell. And lastly, it's like you have to be really lean. You have to have high agency where if you want to do something, you just do it right away. And you just do it right away and iterate and iterate and iterate again. And that is just the best way to really do it. Could you, for so much trends that is happening in VC and it's just moving so fast, could you talk about what are the future trends in venture capital that you're most excited about right now? You also invested in NoCap, an AI angel investor. What do you think is really being overlooked in the market right now?
I think the most exciting part to me is the potential that startups are gonna be more democratized than ever, that you'll be able to, it's already happening. We already invested in some single founders who built the whole the whole machine, with product, marketing, sales, everything is just one person. And we're looking to do more of those because those are the lean ones, especially for a pre-seed fund like ours that doesn't have that much money. This money can be spent better than ever in building the product. You don't need millions to build a product anymore. So anyone can do it, especially from any people from any background can do it, versus before you had to have an amazing network and hire amazing engineers who it's hard to hire if you don't have the money or you have only little money. So that's exciting. The structure of those companies that we're going to be funding that are changing rapidly. I think that's the most exciting thing for me. As for predicting the future, I think we really suck at it. And even the best VCs are not great in predicting the future. I think the best VCs are really good in spotting people who do have the vision for their industry, who can shape the future. So I'm looking for people who are way smarter in every industry that I have no clue about, but they do, and they shape the future of those industries. And if I find a person like that, I'm just gonna be funding them, and I really hope they're right. Frankly, I don't have a thesis for the future, and anyone who does, I think they just kidding themselves. The best entrepreneurs are the only people who really see the future because they're shaping the future, and it's in their heads. There's just different versions of the future I see, and I just need to decide which entrepreneur is the most convincing, has the skills, the ambition to really make this happen. That's what I'm looking at. So that doesn't really change much because that's how it's always been. But what changes is that anyone in a small village in Ukraine, even when there's war happening there, they can still build a unicorn, building on a global market, selling in all the biggest on the biggest markets in the world. So that's what excites me, and that's what's exciting for a lot of small funds like mine. You don't need to have $1 billion fund to be part of the next big company, because they're being built anywhere, and more and more of those are being built in Central Eastern Europe, which I really love because this is where I kind of hopefully make some money.
And right now, since startups are so democratized, there's really no reason why heck, maybe the new startup hub would be Central Eastern Europe, where it's like any place right now can produce those really, really high quality entrepreneurs. So if you are an entrepreneur, you should really be building. And if you're an aspiring VC, there's tons and tons of potential. There's so much more startups to really look at. Could you really talk about what is actually here to stay? You mentioned that predicting the future is really hard, but what is here to stay for the VC model for aspiring VCs?
I don't know. Maybe nothing. That's why we did no cap. Like just in case AI takes over, at least we have a part of this. The idea for no cap is that VC is not relevant anymore, or at least it's not as relevant anymore. That the choosing part can be done by AI, and if the choosing part can be, and if the deal flow can be done by AI, which is the hardest thing you can do in venture capital. Think every pre-seed fund is killing would kill for is like have access to know what people are building right now because they're not they most of the ideas they don't know about. And if NoCap is successful, if most founders first approach to fundraising is have a chat with a bot that's patient, that always has time for you, that can get you really good feedback, and then can either fund you by itself or it can recommend you a really, really matching investor, let it be angel or a VC, then that, you know, person or like AI or company can have the best access ever because people are not going to talk to this random VC because they can like hundreds of random VCs, they can just talk to one and that they connect them. So in the world, that's why I love founders with such a great vision as Jeff and Alex because the vision is bigger than an AI angel investor. The vision is basically disrupting angel list and disrupting Carta and disrupting venture capital in one company. Because once you have access to those early stage founders, you can help them set up the companies. You can help them set up the venture capital round. Hell, maybe you can be a part of this every round of every founder that raises via no cap, and you can become the biggest VC fund ever, not investing a single dollar because you basically get them access, which is something they lack on a big scale. So those are huge, huge opportunities. I think in every company, in every industry, there is an opportunity to build something out of such a big vision that NoCap has. Especially in those kind of hardcore, not really disrupted by the SaaS companies, businesses like energy or logistics, real estate, that kind of did not go with the innovation kind of wave so far because they thought they have a business that's gonna stay there, and now they feel FOMO. They FOMO as fuck because they people can build a new company and they can disrupt the whole thing. I think everything's gonna be disrupted. the Amazon is going to be disrupted, Google is going to be disrupted, Meta, all of the big companies being built in the previous revolution in the 2000s, they're not going to be relevant anymore in the era of new AI. In the era of AI, I think there's going to be a completely reshaping of the whole tech ecosystem, and this is the time to build. And the thing I regret the most when I was a young student, 19-year-old, back in 1999. I didn't go on that wave. I didn't build. I was like, I don't know, have the skills. I don't know how to build yet. This is hard. I'm just gonna drink beer with friends. Like, don't drink beer with friends. You can drink anytime, but now is the time that revolution is happening. So if you're a student right now, what I will be doing is like building. This is the time you have time to build, like, and you can actually like this is during the time of revolution, even the shitty ideas can get you. You can revamp those ideas. You can improve them. At some point, you're successful just because the timing is good for you. So I think the timing is maybe the best timing ever, in the history of mankind to be building companies. So if you're not doing that, you're really doing yourself a disadvantage. If you want to be an entrepreneur, is the time. The time is now.
Yeah, and the timing is the best part where it's like now, just like Boris says, even if your startup's not that good, you can still really scale it way, way, way bigger than, what they could have done in the past. So I know Boris talked about AGI and then, the entire world would kind of just like turn into AI centric where everything can actually be done by AI. So just a follow up to NoCap, is there any successes so far, or is it still really too early to tell?
Well, definitely people love chatting with no cap. So we had like, tens of thousands already that chatted with no cap. So it's already probably one of the biggest startup databases in the world. After like a few months of building, I think they launched in March and we invested in April. So so yeah, I think that's a huge initial success. I think what those guys have as well is they really know how to create viral content that's going to be crucial to and they are really well connected both in the Silicon Valley world of Y Combinator and also in the Eastern European, in the European world with Jeff in SF and Alex in Warsaw. It's the best type of startup I love when you're kind of not just in one place, you're like really connected in the different places. So too early to tell. I mean, the big vision is way, way to be building to build on the grand vision. But I think the initial validation is there. Founders do want to talk to NoCap. They actually enjoy talking to NoCap more than they enjoy talking to most VCs. Most VCs are boring as fuck, and NoCap is fun and it can actually be helpful. So I'm very, very bullish on both NoCap and actually on voice in general, like on kind of voice communication. This is the natural way. That's why we're talking on voice, not chatting, not like, typing now, we're talking voice, and people love, hearing podcasts. And they want to communicate on voice more and more. So I think the voice is gonna be one of the biggest disruptors. AI for content creation, voice for communication, and I'm really happy that the biggest company in voice is actually Polish company in the world, which is 11 Labs.
Yeah, and it's like there's even AI podcasts right now where it's like the Diary of a CEO. That guy really just created an AI podcast on the side, and the retention rate is actually the same percentage as his podcast, The Diary of a CEO. And what he
That's
used
scary.
11 labs. So, it's like Poland is doing amazing. And heck, maybe Poland will actually become the central, startup world in the next 5 years. And that will be led by Boris. I know you talked a bit about how to break into VC. For our viewers who needs an actionable plan to implement right away, what would be your recommended 6-month plan to fully break into VC for ex founders? And say like month one, two, three, four, five.
So if you're ex-founder with an exit, the best way to start putting small checks into VC fundable startups. That's what a lot of people are doing. But I think a lot of people doing this wrong by putting too big checks. If your exit was 10 million, don't start with putting, K checks into random companies because most of those are going to be write-offs. So like put K checks, put 10K checks and actually spend time with those founders and learn if your check made any sense, if those founders are building anything good, if this was like actually a good decision. So like you have to learn by spending. If you just learn by talking, it's not working really well because they're not the founder's not gonna actually spend time with you, because once you actually put your money where your mouth is, it's way easier for them to cooperate with you. And it's also you have a stake in the company, so it makes sense for you to be helping. So I would start with angel investing if you can afford it. If you cannot, I would say programs like 101 or Copenhagen Fellows or VC Lab are really good if you put the time and if you put the effort. I'm so not pleasantly surprised, but people who go through those programs, including some of our ex-interns, were not that great, who just don't put enough effort. They're like, oh, I made it, so I'm gonna put in my CV. No one cares. Like, we're not such a big brand yet. You have to really grab things for you. That's what you're doing. You finish the program and you kind of took the next step. You're building your podcast. That's when I was supporting you, because like, you're putting the effort. And if you put the effort during the program, you build actual connections, meaningful connections. Those are gonna have amazing interest for you in your life, but you really need to put the most out of it. Don't care that it's a free, that doesn't really matter. It's an investment. Like all of those things that you do are an investment. So those two, network with funds, see what you can bring to the table. If you can bring the deal flow, if you can build the like if you can maybe start recommending, have a few funds that you like in your geo or in your industry, make friends with the partners or with the principals or with the associates. Doesn't really matter. Bet on the right people and be very helpful to them. Maybe you invest 10K in that startup, like, bring it to the VC and say, hey, why you love this? And then you're gonna kind of start understanding how the VCs think, how other co-founders think, how other angels think, and you're gonna start also learning whether it's actually for you, whether you actually want to be in a VC. The sad truth is, or like a good truth is, I don't know, is that most founders are not great VCs, and not most great VCs wouldn't be great founders. It's a very different job. So if you are an exited founder, if you're an amazing founder, I don't know, maybe VC is not for you, because VC is like for HGHV people. Like you just, it's not a, like for founders, you have like one product, you have to really focus on selling, you have to really focus on building on your customer. It's kind of, what to do. The life of VC is like almost like constant notifications and constant decision making, whether I should pursue that or not. You're being bombarded by everyone, and it's a good thing. You really have to take those chances, which for everyone else from outside of the bubble, you just kind of have to silence those because they disrupt your work. For me, this is the work. The disruption is the work. So if I miss an amazing intro from someone that could be my fund returner, I suck at my job. So I cannot silence those. I have to really fine tune my mind into really taking every opportunity possible. At some point, it's not possible that you have to still make a filter, but you have to be way more open versus as a founder, you don't have to go to conferences, only those that you can sell to. You only fundraise when you need to fundraise. You don't fundraise, you have to really be way more kind of structured in how you run the business. So very different businesses. I would say I was not a great founder. I'm a better VC, I think, than I was a founder. And for a lot of great founders, angel investing is the way to go, not building a fund and not being a money manager. It's not as fun as you think.
Yeah. And, obviously, Boris, if his startups are great, then he's going to get that amazing carry. But obviously, carry isn't really guaranteed. And, you know, he's working, probably like, oh my gosh, 12 hours, maybe in 20 hours a day or something like that. So it's like if you're in VC, you really, really have to think and see why you want to become a VC. And if you just want to do, 9 to 5, then heck, like Boris says, just do like a big tech job and that will be even more, you get more money, you get more free time, and you kind of just like do whatever you want. Whereas in VC, if a founder calls you, then heck, you're gonna have to pick up that phone and then help them right away. Or heck, even if they just need an intro or anything. And heck, LP might even call you and then you just hop onto a meeting and it's just deciding all of these chaotic things at once. And that's what Boris is good at, but it doesn't mean that everyone is good at that. So, before becoming a VC, look at what a VC actually does. And if you actually want it, then go for it. That was amazing, Boris. For anyone listening who wants to learn more about you or your firm, what is the best place to reach you?
Uh, Traditional email, Boris at SMOK VC. I actually do read all my email. If you personalize it, if you put the effort, I'm at least gonna respond. So that's the best way to reach me. And then also you can follow me on LinkedIn where I think I post the most, and then Twitter or X where I post as much, but without such a big success. But you can still reach out to me over there as well if you want. I'm interested in my golden thoughts for the day. But anyway, if you want to ask something specific, email is the best.
Yeah, and I'll put the description of the contact info. If you want to send Boris an email, really keep it short, really keep it to the point. And if you're an entrepreneur, actually look at the website and then see what, Boris invests in. And then keep that really short, keep your numbers, the dream, the value, and then just send it. Out of everyone who you know, who are two amazing VCs that you would recommend as future guests to our podcast?
I would say Paweł Kuczynski from Point Nine Capital in Berlin. He's probably one of the best in Europe. That's a tough question because there's a lot of great people I admire and that are really adding a lot of value. I would say Bogdan from Underline, a Romanian VC, a single GP that has a really interesting story as well, and he's really great reputation in their home country and trying to kind of build something similar to what we're building for Central Eastern Europe. Those two guys.
Thank you again, Boris, and thanks to everyone who's listening. Comment a question you want to hear from Boris or our next guest. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to press the subscribe button, like, and share it with someone who's interested in getting into venture. We'll see you next time on Break into VC.